Alright then gang, so as it's nearly Christmas, I thought I'd do a nice festive themed tutorial as is customary now on this channel. So in this one I'm going to show you how to make this opening and closing card. So when we click on this, we get this 3D open effect, and when we click on it again, it's going to close. So this is what I'm going to show you how to make in this tutorial. So then to begin with, we've got a few files here. We've got an empty index.html file, and inside the head we link up to a style sheet, which I'll show you in a second, called styles.css. And at the bottom we link up to a script called index.js. So no HTML code at the minute, but inside styles.css we have this very basic style right here. So the body gets a margin of 100 pixels all the way around, just to give the card some breathing room, a background of EEE, which is a very light grey, and the font family is Verdana. And then I've just made some comments for all the different sections that we need to style later on. Now the index.js file is completely empty as well. We will add a little bit of code in there later on, but not much. So first of all, what I'd like to do is create the HTML templates for the card. So to begin with, I want to create a div with a class of card, and this is like the wrapper for the entire card. Now, if you think about how a card's made, it's basically one big piece of card that's folded in half. And then when it's been folded in half, we've got the left side of the card and the right side of the card, right? Now, the left side is the bit that we're going to be animating as it opens, and the right side is where we're going to basically put the message inside the card. So what I'm going to do is a div for the left card section, and then also a div for the right card. So div.right card like so. Now, inside the left card, again, we're going to have two sections. We're going to have the front of the card, which is an image, and we're also going to have the reverse side of that when you open it. So when you open the card, on the left, you've got the inside of the front. Does that make sense? So for the left card, we're going to have two sections. We're going to have the front of the card and the back of the card. Hope that makes sense. Or the outside and the inside of it. So let me do a div for the front, which is where we're going to show the image. So I will say div.card-front, and inside there we're going to have an image shortly. Now down here we're going to do a div for the card-back. Now we're not actually going to put any content on the back of the left card. You can do if you want to, but it's optional. So I'll say optional text goes here. We're going to leave it blank. Now, for the front card, or the card front, we want an image to be shown. Now, I have that image right here. This is from Adobe Stock. I'll leave a link to the image down below so you can go ahead and get that, but it will be watermarked. I've licensed it. So I'm going to just add an image tag right here, and the source is going to be to cover.jpg. And then for the alt, I will just say Christmas card cover like so. So this is the left section of the card. So we have the card front before we open it, and that's with an image on top of it. And the card back, when we do open the left side of the card, is just going to be blank. We might give it a background color later. All right, so for the right-hand side, this is going to be where the message is. Once we open up the card, on the right, you're going to see a message. So we'll do an H2 that says Merry Christmas, and beneath that, I will do a little promo message. Get 75% off your first month of Net Ninja Pro ... And then underneath that, P tag, use code Xmas22 at the checkout. Now, I will try and create that promo. So if you want to sign up to Net Ninja Pro, you can do. The link is going to be down below, and you can just use this code at the checkout if you want 75% off. Nice little plug there for Net Ninja Pro, but whatever. Let's carry on. That's pretty much all of the HTML that we need. So we have the left side of the card. These are the bits that we're going to be animating to open the card. And then once the card is open, you're going to see the right part of the card where the message is. So let's save that. And now let's start up with the styles. So the first thing I want to do is some basic styles for the card itself. This div right here that wraps the entire content inside the card. So let's say .card to select that, and we'll give this a width of 300 pixels and also a height of 300 pixels. You can choose your own dimensions if you wish. That's not overly important. The margin is 0 top and bottom, and then auto left and right, so it sits in the middle of the page. And I think for now that will do. We will add some more styles here later on, but for now that will do. Next, I want to style up the left part of the card, so this div right here. So let's go down to this comment and say left-card. And inside this, I'm going to say the position is relative. And we need to use position relative because later on, we'll be positioning the things inside it absolute relative to the parent. And also, we might be giving this a Z index as well, in which case you need that position property. So after position relative, we can say the width of this is going to be 100%. The height of this is 100%, and that's of the parent right here, so this width and height. Then the cursor will be pointer, so users know how to, or they know to click on it. And then we're going to apply a box shadow to this as well to give it some depth, and it's going to be 5 pixels and 0 pixels, then 5 pixels for the spread, then RGBA, so we can apply an alpha channel. It's going to be black, and it's going to be 0.1 for the opacity. So that will do for now for the left side of the card. For the image on the left, I'll say left card image. We want the width of that to be 100%. And I think for now, for the left card, that will be okay. So now what I'd like to do is style the right side of the card just a little bit. So this stuff right here. So down here, I'm going to say right-card. And first of all, we will say width is 100%. And the height is going to be 100%. That's the 300 pixels and 300 pixels, by the way. So it's 100% of this. And then after that, I will say the background will be white FFF. So it stands out a little bit against the background of the body, which is very light gray. Then I will say text align to the center. And then there's going to be some padding on this, which will be 30 pixels. Now, because we've added padding, I want to make sure the box sizing is border box, so it incorporates the padding and doesn't make it any bigger than the 100% width or height. So I will say box sizing, if I can spell it, is going to be border-box. And then we're going to give this some box shadow as well. So box-shadow, it's going to be 0 pixels in the horizontal direction, 0 for the vertical, and then 5 pixels for the kind of spread, if you like, and then RGBA 0, 0, 0, 0.1 again. All right, so let's also give this a color of 444. That's for the text. Now, I want to give the color of the H2 something different. So maybe red. So we'll say right-card H2, and the color is going to be crimson, in fact. All right, so let's save it for now right there and just check out what it's like in the browser so far. Okay then, so in the browser we can see this is the left side when the card is closed. We don't see the back yet, and that's because we've not added any styles to the back yet, and there's no content inside it. But later on when we click on this, it's going to open, and then we'll see the back of the left side way over here somewhere. And then this is the right-hand side. This is the message inside the card. Now it's down below at the minute, but we're going to position this absolutely to shift it up behind the front of the card or behind the left of the card at the minute. And then when we open this and it animates over here, we'll see this side behind it at the back. Okay, so it's looking all right so far. Let's carry on with the styles. Okay, so what I want to do now is start messing around with the position of the left and the side. So I want to position this absolute and this absolute so they kind of stack on top of each other, and also I want to position this absolutely as well. So let's go back to the styles, and I'm going to come down to the right card first of all, and I will say for this position is going to be absolute. And the reason I'm doing this is because then it's going to sit up behind the left side of the card. So this is going to sit at the back then if we position it absolutely. Now, I'm going to say that it should be top 0 and left 0. And this is being positioned absolutely relative to its parent, which is the card. And remember, that's why we had, oh no, we don't. We need to add a position of relative to this so that the right part of the card is positioned absolutely relative to that parent right here. Okay, I hope that makes sense. Now, next, I also want to position the front and back of the left side absolutely as well. So we're going to give this a position of relative, this left card thing right here. In fact, I think it might already have a position of relative. It does. And then for the children of that, we can say this is positioned absolute and this is positioned absolute. And the reason we're going to do that is so that this and this sit on top of each other. And then they're going to flip eventually when we apply the transition so that we see this one when you open the card and not this one. Okay? So what I'd like to do is come down here and I will say left hyphen card and then card hyphen front and then comma to select something else, left hyphen card, card hyphen back. Now inside that, I want to position both of these absolute. So position is absolute and then the width is 100% and the height is 100% and then also the top 0 and left 0. So they're being positioned absolutely relative to this, the parent. So they're going to sit in the same place and they're going to sit on top of each other. Okay? So what I'd like to do now is preview this in a browser again just to quickly see how we're doing. All right, so now looking at this in the browser, it doesn't seem right. And that's because we've positioned basically all of the different sections of this absolutes. And when we do that, the stacking order is that the thing furthest down in the HTML appears on top above the other things. Now, in order to change that default stacking order, all we need to do is add some z-index properties. So the higher the z-index, then the higher the stacking order. So what we're seeing in the browser is the default stacking order where things lower down in the HTML are appearing on top. So this is appearing on top and then this underneath. But we want it the opposite way around. So this appears on top and this underneath. And then we only see this when we animate this out the way. So in order to do that, we need to add those z-index properties to change the default stacking order. So let's go to the CSS and scroll down to the bottom. And for the right card right here, I'm going to say the z-index is 0. And then for the left card up here, we'll say the z-index is 1. So with it having a higher z-index number, it means the stacking order is going to be such that this sits on top and this sits underneath. All right, cool. So now in the browser, we can see the front of the card as we should. Now we need to start styling the back of the left side as well, because we've not applied any styles to that, because when we open the card later on and this flips over, then the back of this is going to show, which is basically the inside of the left part of the card. Does that make sense? So I want to apply some styles to that as well. So right around here where we're styling the left part of the card, let's come down and say left hyphen card and then just the card back. So the back of the left section of the card, right? And then for this, we will say the background is going to be some kind of gray color, F4, F4, F4. All right. So let me save this now and just see what happens in the browser. All right, so now in a browser, we can see we no longer have that image on the front and we see the back, the thing we just styled instead. And the reason this is happening is because remember, the front and the back, they're both positioned absolutely and they're stacking on top of each other. And remember that default stacking order means that the thing further down in the HTML is further up in the stack. So that's why we see this on top and the image will be sitting underneath it. Now we could use z-index again to rearrange this order so that we see the image on the top, but we're not going to do that. Instead, we're going to be using the transform property to rotate the different sections of this card, because later on, that's what we'll be transitioning to open the card as well. So dead quickly, for the back, which we're currently seeing on the top, I'm going to apply this transform property to rotate it around the y-axis. And I'm actually rotating it 180 degrees, not 90 degrees. So imagine that would be kind of fully the opposite way around, okay? Now, when I do that, if I save it and we preview, we can still actually see that the back is sitting on top of the image, the front part of the card. And that's because all we've done is we've rotated this thing right here, this grey square, 180 degrees. So essentially, if you've got a piece of paper on the floor and you turn it over, that's 180 degrees. And the origin, the transform origin, is right down the middle here. So we're not transformed it relative to this side, so it would flip that way. We've transformed it relative to the middle of the element. That's the default value right here. So we've essentially just turned it over. Now, there's a way in CSS that we can say to the browser, if an element is rotated 180 degrees, so basically we're seeing the back of the element, don't show it. So that's what we're going to do now, and we're going to do that inside this selector right here, where we have the front and also the back. So these two things right here, the front and the back. And for both of those, we're going to use this property, backface visibility, and set it to hidden. And that means that essentially, when that particular element, when either of these, the front or the back, are flipped over 180 degrees and we're seeing the back of it, well, when that's the case, I want you to hide that element. So to begin with, because the back of the left side of the card is flipped 180 degrees, we're saying, okay, well, because we're seeing the back of that, hide it. So we won't see it, and we'll see the image underneath. But then later on, when we open the card and we see essentially the back of the image, we're going to hide that instead. And we will see then the front of the back of the card, if that makes sense. All right, so let me save this again, and we should see the image now. And there we go, my friends, we do. Now, just to demonstrate this point, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this and I'm going to transform it to rotate it around the Y axis, and it's going to be 180 degrees. Now, when I do that, we don't see it because we're essentially flipping it round so we see the back of it, and we said that the back face visibility of that part of the card, the front and the back, is hidden. So now we just see the right side of the card underneath because both of the left sides of the card are essentially hidden. Now, if I go to this bit, the card back, which is still on the left side of the card, and change that rotation back to 0, now we can see it. Okay? So whenever one of these elements is at 180 degrees rotated, we're not going to see it. And that allows us to show only the front or the back of the card at any given time. All right then, so now we're at the point where we want to kind of open the card when we click on it and do that little transition or animation. Now, we're not going to use keyframes or anything like that. We're literally just going to use transition properties. So first of all, I need to detect a click inside the JavaScript on the card. And then when we have that click, I'm going to toggle a class on the card itself. So this thing. So we can look for that toggled class and we can apply transitions when the card has that class. Now I'm just going to paste this in, but I will explain it dead simple. We have a document.query selector right here to select the card element. That's this thing right here. And we store that inside this card. Then we add an event listener, which is a click event, and we fire a function when that event occurs. So when we click on the card, we get the class list of the card and we toggle the open class. So now when we're clicking on this card, it's going to apply the open class, then take it away, then apply it, etc. every time we click on it. And I'm just going to demo that right here. So look at this div. This is the div with the class of card that we attach the event listener to. When we click on this, it gets a class of open. When we click on it again, it's now removed that open. Open, closed, open, closed. So what we can do now is when we detect that open class, we can style it in a different way. And those styles can be transitioned from the original position, if you like, to the new one. So to do this, I've already pasted in this small rule right here. So now we're looking for the card when it has the open class. And then we look for the left card, which is all this section right here. And we're essentially flipping that whole thing by 180 degrees, minus 180 degrees. So we're flipping the whole thing over. So that means that we should see the back instead of the front. Now, there's a couple more things that we need to do, and that's on the left card itself. So this thing right here that we have highlighted. So down here, I'm going to paste in just a couple more properties. So we have the transition property, which is basically saying transition any transforms and take 1 second to do that. Now that's what we're transitioning because we have this transform right here. So that means it's going to animate that property, that flip, if you like. And also we have this transform style, which says preserve 3D. Now, what that's going to allow us to do is get a bit of a 3D effect as we turn the card. I'm going to show you that in a second. But also the transform origin is 0, 0, meaning it's going to flip the card from the very left instead of the middle of the item. Because remember, we want to flip from the left as if we're opening that card. Okay, so now what I want to do is come to the top right here, the very top parent, and say perspective is going to be 1400 pixels. And this basically ties in with this thing right here, the 3D. So the higher this number, the less the effect. If this was a really low number, then we're going to get like a really 3D perspective as we open the card. But I'm going to crank it up so that it reduces that effect a little bit. All right, so let's give this a whirl. All right then, so now in a browser, when we click on this, we get that rotation transition. Awesome. And we click again to close it. That's looking pretty cool, right? And notice as I open this, notice the 3D effect we get. It kind of skews it a little bit. So notice it gets bigger the closer to you it gets. So it looks pretty natural. Now there's one more thing I want to do, and that's just to scoot this over to the left when it's open, just so it sits in the middle of the page when it's open, because when it's closed it does, but when it's open, it's way over on the left, all of this card. I want to move the whole thing to the center again. So to do this, I'm going to say the card starts off with a left position of 0, and then down here, for the open card, I'm going to paste in a rule. So card to open, and left is 150 pixels. Now for the transition of the card, going from left 0 to left 150 pixels, we want to say, so transition, we'll just say all, that picks up the left property. We could say left if we wanted to, but we'll say all, and then 1 second, which is the same amount of time as it takes to transition the other transform, where we rotate the card. So I'm going to save this now and preview one last time. All right then, so let's try this one more time. Yep. And now we can see when we open it, it scoots to the right, and when we close it, back to the left. So now the card is always sitting in the middle of the browser. Pretty awesome, right? So then, my friends, that's how we create this card effect using CSS and a little bit of JavaScript, not much at all. I really, really hope you've enjoyed this tutorial. If you have, do not forget to share, subscribe, and like. That really, really means a lot. And I probably won't upload another video now before Christmas, so I will wish you all a merry one and then see you in the next tutorial.